Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lost Love Stories. I am your host, Pam Baker, and today I have somebody who I love so much. My dear, dear, dear friend, Bob Hope. And everybody says, Bob Hope. And I'm like, yeah, different Bob
That's everybody over 35 says
Hope. Everybody loves this Bob Hope so much. So I'm so excited that I got you to actually agree to come on here and share your story and Susan's story with us. So welcome, Bob. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well,
Just
I've known you for many, many, many years and known you much better over the last few years. So Bob, just to give you a little background, you actually knew John more because you guys were on the same board members and da 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 all that. But
I was actually, of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I think, the chair like 3 years in a row or something like that.
okay,
So I was very
yeah,
involved.
yeah, and he always did that, the fancy stuff. I was always, stuffing the envelopes for the fundraising, and he did all of the handsome face stuff, be out there with his pretty face. But when John passed, of course, just to give everybody a little background, when John passed away, that's when you started reaching out to me. And I tell everybody you were like my little grief guardian angel because you would just check in and see how I was doing. And just, it was just great to know somebody was there who knew him, but also had gone through the same thing with your own wife, Susan. Not exactly the same, but cancer. And it was very comforting to me to have somebody who is just a few years ahead of the journey. And then, of course, we'll get into this later, but the whole, how my journey back to joy was literally because of you as well. So, I'm really excited to have everybody hear your story and Susan's story, but also like you being my like I said, my guardian angel through the process of loss and grief and then joy. So I am owe you a debt of gratitude for providing the space and the path to start my journey back. So yeah. So I'm
Thank you. Well, you certainly are part of my joy, so I
Aw,
appreciate
thank
that.
you. Thank you. Well, let's just get into it. So tell us, well, first, you can do a little intro of yourself, but, and I always try to say and not but, and then we'll just get into like Susan. I want to know like how you met, all the good stuff. Give us all the fun, you know, nitty gritty details of how
I
that
can
whole
do it. I can
story.
do it.
So
We were
yeah,
together 46 years, so I've got a lot of
cheers,
nitty
one.
gritty there.
Yeah.
Um, well, about me, I'm just an old time promoter. I mean, I started working for the Atlanta Braves when I was 18 years old. I became the head of PR and promotion when I was 24 and went through Hank Aaron's home run chase with him. And we became good friends, which was a real blessing because actually, when he died, I was one of two non family pallbearers in his funeral. And then from there, after the home run chase, Ted Turner came along and I was his promoter for years. And then I ended up in New York at the top of the largest public relations firm in the world. So, I just had this, in my mind, the storybook career. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm just blessed. Nothing bad ever happens to me. So, and then, as you well know, some things bad do happen to you. And I thought it was shocking when Susan got sick. In fact, for the longest time, we just kind of thought this is not real. This can't really be happening. And not long before that, she and I even talked about how nothing bad ever happens to us. Everything's great, and then it's not. So but Susan and I, just to give you background, I was like I said, I started working with the Braves when I was 18, and I was at probably 23, 22 years old, and I was asked to attend the hospitality uh, room at a conference of the Recreation Association in Georgia. So I wasn't going to go, but then I decided, well, it's in a local hotel that I just go try to find it. Well, I'm on the floor where I thought it would be, and I figured there'd be a sign. There were no signs. So I'm kind of going from door to door, listening inside to see if there was noise. And I finally knocked on the door, and this young woman opens the door, and I just thought she was the most beautiful person I'd ever
Oh,
seen in
what
my life. I mean,
find
it was like
Dorothy?
totally. I mean, it was like whatever love at first sight is. I mean, I just absolutely
Wow.
bought into her, and so I was doing everything I could to just flirt with her, impress her. She didn't want anything to do with me. And she had her boyfriend there. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, if I can't get close to her, maybe I can get close to him. And so I'm talking to him, and he said, "Oh, I'm a big baseball fan. My dream is to someday play baseball on a big league baseball field." Well, yeah, I'm 22, 23 years old, and I don't know how I had enough nerve to do this. I said, "Well, get all your buddies together, and we'll get in our cars, and we're going to go down to the old Atlanta Stadium."
Oh my
And so
God.
I drive in through the tunnel. The security guard sees me. I have these cars behind me. And so I go up and I turn on the lights of the stadium. I unlock the locker room, so
Oh
they could
wow.
go put on uniforms and play baseball in the field. And why I didn't get fired, I have no idea. But sit in the dugout with Susan watching. And I'm thinking, well, if this has got to impress her, boy, she's going to be so impressed. Well, as it turned out, she just thought I'd lost my mind. And so I just, I mean, I was so infatuated and so focused on her that I knew it. I think everybody around me knew it. Susan probably thought it was an annoyance, but Martha, her roommate, thank God for Martha, came to me and said, "Bob, I think Susan needs you. All these guys are calling her up all the time, and she just hadn't really had a good relationship. And this is scary. She said, you just seem to be a stable, nice guy. I'm going to help you. So what we're going to do is you and I are going to start dating, and we're going to look for your opening with Susan." So we started dating for a while, and that got me into their apartment where I could sit on the sofa and they'd be watching TV. So I got to
God.
know her a little bit. And it just sort of evolved. So finally, Martha and I decided what we need to do. We got to figure out how to make the transition. So we decided we'd find an event that it was fine for me and Martha to go to and invite Susan to go along. So there'd be like a threesome.
Yeah.
So the circus was coming to town.
Mhm.
And so we told Susan, yeah, we're going to the circus. Why don't we get you a ticket? You come with us. So she agreed to. And so, as I would only do, I checked out the program, the stars of the circus, and found that Malakova, the wire walker, was the big, and Aerialist was the big star. And
Okay.
so the morning of the circus, I go through the trailers and back, and I find Malakova.
Oh my
And I
God.
sit down with her and I said, look, I've got these two women. During intermission, I'd like to bring them back to meet you. And I'm going to tell you that tell them we're old friends. so,
Oh
it's like, and so I'm there that night, and, intermission comes along, and I said, well, I've got a friend in the circus here. Malikova's the star. I said, let me introduce you. So we go back there, and I'm telling you what, she pulled it off like you wouldn't believe it. She's
my
bringing out scrapbooks and all this. And I thought, surely this will impress Susan.
God.
Well, it didn't seem to impress her that much. And so we tried a few things like that, and I never could actually figure out. First of all, I'm dating her roommate, so she wasn't going to,
Yeah.
interfere with that. So we needed to find something. So I go into their apartment one night, and they're like opera glasses on a table. And I asked Martha, I said, what are these? She said, those are Susan's opera glasses. She likes to go to the opera. You know, sadly, nobody our age likes to go, so she goes by herself. Well, just by fate, blessing of God, I'm sitting on the, like 2 weeks later or something, I'm sitting on the sofa. They're sitting on the floor watching TV, and I'm reading the newspaper. And I said, oh my gosh, Rigoletto's come to town. And Susan said, you like opera? I love opera. But, people our age just don't like opera. So I ended up having to go by myself. She said, well, I like opera. And so I said, why don't I get us a couple of tickets? So I'm thinking this, I mean, I'm going, there was no internet back then. I'm going to the library and I'm studying opera and all this so I can pull it off. Well, I pick her up and it just felt like I can't let well enough alone. So on the way down there, I said, Susan, I said, I'm a huge opera fan. And she said, well, I know. And I said, the thing about opera is you get caught up in it. and it's like you sort of lose the presence of your mind. It pulls you. A really good opera pulls you up on the stage, and you just lose, your consciousness. So I just got to warn you. Occasionally, at a really good opera. And by the way, not every opera that comes to Atlanta is a great opera. I've been known to yell "Bravo." She said, "Don't you dare! I'll be so embarrassed." And so I thought, well, that's funny. And so I'm sitting there, and she's, sitting to my right, and she's looking at through her little opera glasses, and I'm trying to stay awake. And this guy next to me is sort of lunging forward, and I kept looking at him, what's going on? And suddenly he yells, "Bravo." Well, for an instant, she thinks it's me, and she slings her pocketbook and her walk so hard that her watch flies down the aisle. And then she, realized it wasn't me. Well, I don't know how that broke the ice, but suddenly that was our first date. And then we went on with, and yeah, I think we like a perfect match. I mean, everything that I liked, I mean, we're both Methodist, United Methodists. We both like sports. I mean, God knows she had to like sports because I worked for the Braves. She'd come to every game. She just, it was just a very, as enjoyable as a marriage could be. Ours was very compatible and enjoyable. We had, I was Ted Turner's crazy promoter. I had to come up with all these, wedlock and headlock and, just, weddings before the game and, just, crazy promotions all the time. And I always said the only people that I thought that I knew thought those were good ideas were me, Ted Turner, and Susan. Everybody else thought I was out of my mind.
They're like, what is he doing now?
And so, we just went along the way. We basically, I left working for Ted Turner simply because you can only report directly to him for so long till it just kills you. I mean, the pressure is intense, even though he's a good boss. I mean, just your expectations. And so I go to work for Coca-Cola. I thought it was a great company, but the most boring job compared to working for Ted.
Yeah.
And then I go in the PR business, which means that it resulted in me and Susan and our family moving to New York. So we had that experience, but we just had adventures together. I mean, just, all over the world. And it was just a wonderful time, wonderful marriage. And, it lasted, 46 years is a good long time in today's world.
That's
And,
time.
like I said, we never thought anything would go wrong. And then one day she'd been to the doctor and they were checking her to see if she had gallstones because she had some indigestion. And she called up and they had told her she had liver cancer.
Oh,
And so we thought, well, that can't be, maybe you go in and maybe they'll,
yeah.
do a little surgery and it'll be all over with. But it turned out it was the deadliest kind. So the blessing in it was that and by the way, there's certain people that you just know from my job. One of them was Andrew Young, the ambassador, and he was a minister to start with. So in his heart he was. Well, his first wife, Jean, died of the same thing.
Oh,
And they
really?
were married 42 years. So he just called me one day and he said, "I'm going to tell you how to approach this," which was a blessing. And he said, first of all, when you're alive, when two people are alive, they think about what they're doing right now and their plans for the future, what they want to do in the future. You really don't think about all the wonderful times you've had in the past. So and it turned out to be 26 months for Susan. He said, over the next few months, you and Susan take the time to think about what you've done together and
Wow.
just, cherish that time. And Susan's attitude was great. I remember Susan saying, "Look, I don't want this to happen. However," she said, "most people die and they celebrate their lives." She said, "Now everybody's celebrating their life, my life. They're coming to see me. They're bringing me stuff and all that." She said, "That's not all bad." But we did all of that. And then also one thing that Andrew Young said, which was really important, said, she's not going to leave you. Said physically she won't be around, but she'll always be with you. And don't fight that. People will say, "Move on." Said, it's just not going to happen. She's always going to be part of your life. There'll be a sense sometimes when you're, in a room or a place you've been before that her presence is still there. One of the things that I thought I never expected, but was funny, was I would have dreams and she'd be in the dream. And she's so real. We'd be going to a movie sometimes. The only really adventuresome we had, and I think this is probably after I watched the Jason Bourne movie or something, is the two of us were in Prague. and
Mhm.
we were trying to escape to the other side of the bridge to get to the castle, and
Oh,
somebody was chasing us, and
fun
we were
dream.
trying to figure that out. But you'd still have that sense of presence. I mean, she'd be in your dreams. You'd think of, you'd remember something, and you also, for the longest time, when you would hear something that you thought was really interesting, the first thought you'd have is, "I got to call Susan. She'd
Yeah.
really like that." And then you think, "Well, I really can't call her."
Yeah.
Anyway, we just you know, not everybody's so lucky. I mean, I find so many folks that are just really good people, and they get married, and it's just not a good match, and
Mhm.
it doesn't work out. And I think there's a tremendous amount of luck probably that goes into finding the right partner, and then having a joyous life together. And we did. We have two great daughters. I mean, I know they're not totally perfect, but they seem perfect. And then and four wonderful grandchildren. Just you know, for all the misery that goes into losing a partner, just to think about the legacy that she left of these two great daughters and four great grandchildren. Sometimes I do think a lot about how Susan would feel to see that Henry, my grandson, is now a graduate of Georgetown, is working in Atlanta, and has a really great job here, and that his sister, Claire, little Claire, she's not little, she's 6 feet tall, but younger Claire, because Claire's my youngest daughter. But she's now starting Furman. She graduated from high school in Lake Forest, Illinois. The little Nate, who is just is was what she Nate was around when Susan died, and he still remembers Susan.
He
I don't
does.
know how much he remembers, but oh my gosh, she just adored Nate. Nate has Down syndrome, and
Yeah.
then Lucy, who's just precious, and and Susan always, her dream in life, she said, she'd love to be a basketball coach. Well, she was only 4'11". There weren't many options,
Yeah.
but she loved basketball. That was probably her favorite sport. And so I kept thinking, Lucy is, you know, I guess this will be her third year as a starter. She'll be a junior in high school, but she's, plays on the basketball team. And I thought, how much
Yeah.
Susan would just enjoy.
Love that. Yeah.
But then again, Susan was a huge University of Georgia fan. And when Georgia won two national championships in a row, I kept thinking that she and maybe Vince Dooley were up there sort of colluding to figure out how to make sure that happened.
I know. I think about that too because, she was so little. I mean, she was powerful personality on a tiny little body, but in Henry being so freaking tall. How tall is
Yeah.
Henry? Like
Henry, I don't know. Henry's got to be 6'5", 6'6", something
he's
like that.
got to be. I was going to say 6'7". He's so tall. Like with the two of them together, just funny that he's an offspring of hers, like
Yeah.
through the generations. It's so crazy. They're so different. I was gonna say too, like where would the kids or, with Betsy and Claire, but I would think it would show up too with the grandchildren. And I think about this, my future grandchildren, is where do you see? I'm sure she peeks out in them at times. Do you see her come through?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, and gestures, that you see them make, you think, well, that's genetic or whatever, but it
Yeah,
just looks like Susan. And of course, Claire, my youngest daughter, and Claire, she's short. She's very much,
looks so much.
Betsy, the older daughter, is tall like
Yeah.
me, and then you have Claire, who looks a lot like Susan, and also has that feisty, determined personality. Talk about you know truth to power. Boy, Claire's going to tell you what she thinks, regardless of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Susan was always that way. But certain just sweet things happen. I mean, little Lucy, when Susan died 10 years ago, and so Lucy she's 16 now. She was 6,
Yeah.
and so we're at the celebration of life at the church, and which, by the way, was a huge. Everybody, Susan was beloved. So I mean, the place was packed. I mean, like I'd never seen it before. But Claire had the idea. Susan used to collect groceries for on her birthday, and all said, "Don't bring me presents, send me groceries, and I'll take them to food pantries."
Yeah.
And she would have the food pantries. If you go to the Atlanta Food Bank, you got to pay money for the food, even though it's not much. And a
Okay.
lot of local food pantries don't have any money. So Susan would find the ones that couldn't afford it, and she would take food to them all the time. And it became a thing. So people were always bringing her bags of food. Well, when they had the celebration of life, Claire's idea was to put in her obituary that, for the service in honor of Susan, bring a bag of groceries. And so in the church, there were rooms filled with groceries, and the church said, "We'll get them around to everybody." Well, I'm sitting in the, um, you know, in the pew and with little Lucy, and we're walking out, and Lucy had thought about that, and they talked a little bit about it during this, her tradition of doing that during the celebration. And Lucy said, "No, I'm going to be 7 in 2 months. I'm going to tell my friends to bring a bag of groceries." And I thought, oh, that's going to be 7 bags. I mean, that's, or whatever. It's not going to be much. I mean, our friends, I don't know how many would come, but the parents got behind it and all, and so they just brought a lot of groceries. And so I remember just going to the places that I knew Susan liked to deliver groceries, and it's just Lucy and I going out there and pulling up and back, and them coming out and unloading it. And we went to one place in Tucker, Georgia, and then there the young man comes out to help us unload, and he looks at Lucy and he said, "Now, why are you doing this?" And she said, "I'm doing it for my grandmother." And I thought, oh my gosh, what a touching moment, just to show how, what an influence
That
somebody
is
can be on their.
a beautiful place for her legacy to live on too, just by example, because she was such a giving, amazing giving soul in so
Well,
many.
she was, and I think both of her daughters are that way, and certainly the grandkids are that way. I mean, in just in an area of kindness. Henry, who we're talking about, who's really tall,
Yeah.
is, Betsy, his mom calls her his gentle giant. But
Mm-hmm.
that's, and he just, him, Nate, who's a handful, he's
Yeah.
12 now, has Down syndrome, he can be a little feisty. Henry will just call up and come take him to dinner. And
Oh,
if we're going to dinner someplace, Henry will say, "Come on, I'm going to take you to get an ice cream." And he'll take him to Brewster's or something to get
yeah.
ice cream. And I
Oh,
always think, it's for a lot of young people, that would be a dreaded drudgery. But
yeah.
for, just to say, let's go do it, just to have that feeling that, this is my cousin who, has Down syndrome, and I'm going to take care of him.
Yeah. And Henry has such a calmness about him too that I'm sure it like by just being within the presence of Nate, it probably calms Nate too. Do you see that at all?
Well, I think that's true. Now, we all say that Henry can control Nate like nobody else.
Good. He's
Just
just
I
weapon.
could get frustrated with Nate sometimes, and Henry
Yeah.
just comes in, and Nate's suddenly calm. So,
Oh, I can totally see that. Well, those are awesome. I want to know what was one of your absolute favorite things, either that Susan did or little quirky habits. Like what is something you think about when you think of Susan that you're just like,
well,
oh,
I mean, a lot of some of them are big things. I mean, some of them are like, she was the most avid Georgia football fan. She was an avid fan of anything if they put on the red and black uniforms playing. I don't know what the sport is. She loved it. But we go to, one year we went to every game, home game, out of town. I mean, she just loved to go to the games. And it was interesting because after she died, I kept the season tickets, and I probably financially should have held on to them anyway because you could sell them,
yeah,
for
seriously.
money. But we had 50-yard line tickets, and they
Oh
were
my
great.
God.
And but we'd go to every game, and she just enjoyed that so much. And we'd tailgate, and Susan, occasionally something unique would happen, like when a previous ownership group bought the Hawks. Dominique Wilkins, their former star player, was involved in the ownership group, and he was having, they needed somebody to kind of straighten out, I'll say, his finances and some things he was doing. So my job was to have dinner with him every couple of weeks. Well, I'd have dinner with Dominique, and we'd try to figure out stuff to talk about, but I didn't know a whole lot about basketball. So, but I brought Susan along one night. Well, I didn't even have to talk because she knew basketball so well. They're talking about all these different plays and players in the
Wow.
league and all that sort of business, which was, I mean, I sat there, I was
That's
stunned.
amazing.
But then Dominique went to a couple of Georgia basketball games with us. But then the other thing that was interesting is one time Susan invited him to go to a Georgia football game with us.
Hmm.
And Susan went over early. Dominique had an autograph session or something, so he and I drove over, and Susan went over and started, with her brother-in-law Major, who did they were doing their tailgating, so we were going to join the tailgate. Well, it was really interesting to me. Dominique had not been back to Georgia. This is his first football game, and we're walking down the street, and he's very recognizable. First of all, he's very tall, but
Yeah.
he's recognizable when he has his glasses off. And then when he
Oh.
put his glasses on, people didn't recognize him so quickly. But we didn't have Susan had the parking space, so we had to park on the other side of town and walk through town, and all these people yelling, "Hey, Neek, hey, Neek." And I said, you ought to be here. You're a mayor. I mean, why would you not live up here? But then during the game, Susan just had such a great time talking to him. I mean, she just, it just, because she grew up in Athens. Her dad took her to every game from the time she was 5 years old, and that was such an important part of her life. And the other thing is just things that influenced you that she just naturally did. Like she would always, she volunteered at the International Rescue Committee
Hmm.
to help refugees coming in.
Oh,
And
wow.
she would, kind of, I guess, mentor different refugees. And we would, it, you could depend on the day before Christmas and Christmas Day that we'd be out delivering gifts to these refugee homes or something. And it was, I mean, it was sweet and it was nice. I mean, to me, it was a little bit of a chore. I didn't quite
Yeah.
have the positive spirit about it that she
Uh-huh.
did, but that just brought her great joy. And then I remember one time we went in and there was a grandmother and a little girl, and we had whatever little girls would have dolls and stuff like that, and took them in there, and they had this little sad looking tree in their apartment, and there was nothing under it. So you
Oh,
go in there and you deliver all this stuff, and you think, wow, this is she had a special heart. In fact,
yeah.
there was a Methodist bishop named Bevel Jones who Susan admired, and Bevel used to say she was the most altruistic person he'd ever met.
Oh,
And I
wow.
do think, I mean, just her thought process of helping other people was just remarkable.
I mean, on so many levels. I don't think I've ever heard the refugee part of her story. I mean, I know she's done so many things in so many areas that like supremely impactful, and we'll get into Honduras in a minute, but
Well,
that
the refugees, the refugee store, after she died, they had a ceremony and named it after her.
wow, dang, that's impressive. Like she's done so much. The trickle down, the ripple effect of her impact on the world is like you can't.
Well, she had a lot of impact. The other thing she had is just an ability to relate to people.
Uh-huh.
She just had a little, I don't know, it was charisma or whatever, but we'd go to a party and I might as well not even be there. Susan would be,
Which says a lot because you work a room like nobody. Like you know
yeah,
everything, you know how to
well,
work
she
the
was
room.
my teacher, I guess. Taught me how to do it.
It rubbed off on you. That's how you ended up. You may have found yourself in promotions, but the PR side of it, maybe
Yeah.
she was like your little guiding light on that. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, is there something that you can think of, and then we'll get into the other stuff, but I'm just curious, like so many people knew and loved her and know and still love her. Um, is there some story or something about Susan that people don't know that you think would be cool for people to know about her?
Well, I mean, she loved young people going away to college. I mean, I don't know, it's a great story. In fact, I did this uh, for little Claire, who just went to Furman, copied Susan. But Susan would always go get towels of whatever the school colors were of any kid in our church, any kid in the neighborhood that was going to college. She'd get towels of their school and embroider their name on them,
That's
and that would be her gift, and she did it all the time. Then she would send them goodie packages
mm-hmm.
on a regular basis. For Halloween, for Christmas, she'd always, send them. Sometimes, sadly, at colleges, the kids wouldn't go by and pick up their packages, so the candy would be there for a long time. But she just had this. She could relate to teenagers really well. And one of I'm trying to think of his name right now, who went to our church, was, he was a strong guy, kid, but he went to the University of Georgia, and he didn't go on a football scholarship. He's a doctor now, and
Uh-huh.
he called Susan. He said, "I'm on the football team," and she said, "You are?" And said, "Yeah, I'm doing it for you." So I
Aw,
just, and so he
you
was,
have a
you know,
walk on or
he
something?
was all, yeah, he was a walk on. He dress
Oh,
out for the
cool.
games and all that, and then she'd see him after the games, and he was he just went on to
Wow.
become a doctor later. But that was I
That's so
thought it
really
was.
cool. I love that. Oh my God. She's amazing. Um, let's see. I wanted to say too, like, okay, we're gonna go back to this space for just 1 second, but upon diagnosis, now, you said you thought it was a gallstone issue, and then they come back with this. Do you remember in that moment, like trying to process that? Like what, you're taking,
I don't think you can process it. I
yeah.
mean, I remember actually it wasn't the oncologist who told her the really bad news. They had, I guess, a medical assistant come in, and we're sitting there, and she's saying now there, you know, uh, 4 stages of cancer. He
Hmm.
said stage one is this, blah blah blah. Stage two is this. Stage three is this. Stage four, the worst, and all that. And she said, and you're kind of waiting. She said, you have stage four.
Ugh,
And then she told her, said, if we treat you and all, the longest you can live is probably 8 months.
wow.
Well, you're sitting there, you just don't believe that. I mean, it's kind of like it doesn't really register you with you. It's just surreal.
Mhm.
And you're thinking, well, did I hear what I think I heard? And then after a while, I mean, you go back into some sessions and you start some chemo and all that, and then you realize it really is. Well, I remember after several chemo treatments and all, uh, the Dr. El Reyes, the you know liver specialist, she's sitting with him and saying, "Well, how much longer do I have to do this?" And it just had not really registered in her mind that this was terminal. It was he tried to tell her. He said, "You're always going to have to do it. It's just not it's not going to go away." During her first chemo treatment, there was this young woman. I'll say young woman. She was probably 35 or so,
Mhm.
who had taught at the University of Georgia, who was in there for chemo, and so they're talking about what they're going to do after they get cured. And this is after been told she wasn't going to be cured. And so the two of them decided they were going to go on this trip to some exotic place, to Tahiti or something. And then during that process, not very long after that, the other woman died.
Mhm.
And just that whole, I guess, sort of morbid feeling that you have that what you're going through is, it's not like everybody on earth doesn't go through something at some
Yeah.
time, but it's very unique to you, and you realize that you got to, that life is fragile, that you got to really care about the people around you. And also, one of the things that bothered me was, I had a man I knew in town whose wife also had cancer. Well, during that process, he ran off with a younger woman, and I kept thinking, I mean, you keep thinking, well,
Oh,
that's terrible, but at the same time, you think, well, maybe that's just a reflection of how people handle stress.
yeah.
Because and also the stability of a marriage. I think you had the same thing. In Susan and I's case, I always thought she's part of my family.
Mhm.
That there was never any remote thought that you would ever not be part of my family. It was like just like my daughters. You can't say, okay, my gosh, I'm divorcing you as a daughter or something. That you just you're all one unit, and that's and I think that's not as rare as some people might say it is, but it's just really important to have that unity and bond with whoever your spouse is.
I mean, that's part of through sickness and in health, like
Yeah.
the part of
Oh
the deal.
yeah. And the
Um,
sickness part of it is not, it's not what you bargained for, but it's
no.
what you get.
You're like, yeah, yeah, sure, of course. I remember the very first wedding that I went to after John died. It's probably a year or two later. I always get weepy at weddings because they're beautiful and magical and, give you all the,
So that's the way you are, right?
yeah. But man, when it got to that part, the vows,
Yeah.
I totally broke down. I cried so hard. It was almost embarrassing. Like I almost couldn't catch my breath. But it was a sense of almost like a sense of pride because I felt like we did that. Like we did the damn thing. We honored those vows till death
Yeah.
do us part. And we went through all the things that are mentioned in those vows and we were still together till the end. You know what I mean? Like I was very emotional, but it was almost like in a prideful is not the right word, but it was like in a positive way, like almost gratitude, like we did it, and our marriage wasn't always happy. We all have our troubles, our challenges, our things, but to like sit in that moment and reflect on vows, the vows you take when you get married and say, wow, we did that. We did all of that.
Well,
And
and I think all of us, I won't say they're rough spots, but all of us have times when maybe you take somebody for granted more than you should,
Mhm.
and all that sort of business. But Susan would, in a kidding way, get aggravated with me. I was on the board for years of the Women's Sports Foundation in New York, so you'd have all these, young women athletes, and really, in fact, we were talking about Dominique Wilkins. He went up to make a presentation when they had their big banquet at the Waldorf in New York. And I remember we were in there and we both leaving to go to the bathroom or something. He looked at me and said, yeah, I've never been in a room with so many beautiful women. But I'd go to, all my meetings with the women. And I mean, I felt in my mind, I rationalized, I'm doing this for my daughters, but I
Yeah,
just enjoyed it. And
but it
so
was
I,
also good.
and Susan I'd come back and she said, well, how was everything with your women?
With
Well, she
women.
did. They are my women.
That's so awesome. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's so good. Well, one thing too, I think as you were talking about Susan, I think that part of the things that it's good for people who have that diagnosis and they're facing their own demise is to keep a positive attitude and still keep like, oh yeah, we're gonna fight this. I remember for me with John, it was really hard for me to watch that.
Hmm.
And because it almost felt very isolating and lonely for me because I didn't feel like I had any space to talk about the what ifs. Like, okay, it's good to be like positive. You're going to beat it. You're going to be the 1% who doesn't succumb to this. And also, I'm really freaking worried about what happens if you're not the 1%. And I'm scared and and I
Yeah.
feel like
Oh,
I
absolutely.
that. So with you, that I pictured you when when you were talking about Susan talking to the young woman and they're making their plans for Tahiti. If you're listening to that, like I put myself in those shoes, like listening to not the same conversation, but the same gist of the conversation of when we beat this, when we're done, and being like, oh, like how did you feel in those moments?
It's hard to say. I mean, I knew intellectually, I knew
Hmm.
that she wasn't going to live, but it was always, first of all, there was a Dr. Kubi who was the surgical oncologist, and they couldn't operate. But
Okay.
after they had figured that out, he called me one day. I was at a Rotary Club meeting, and I saw on my phone that Emory was calling, so I go outside. And he's on the phone. He said, Bob, I want to tell you something to start with. He said, I've given terrible news to hundreds of people. And he said, one thing I've found out is attitude means a lot more than people think. And he said, I know that, you've been told how long she might live. I'm just going to tell you, she's going to live a lot longer than that.
Oh, wow.
Because he said, I could talk to her all day. He said, she just had the best attitude of anybody I've ever met.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, and she did all the way through. But what happened, which is just interesting, and, my last name's Hope, obviously, but is hope is important when you're have an illness like that. Susan was going through treatments and they tried different, chemo, and then they tried, other, test stuff and, immunotherapies and all. And all the time, she was fairly vigorous. I mean, she wasn't as strong as she had been before because she used to work out every day and walk forever. I mean, she didn't start at 7 in the morning. You wouldn't see her till noon. But what happened is she seemed, she would watch all her favorite shows and people would come over and she'd socialize with them and all that until I guess maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before she died, they called her in and said, okay, we've done everything we can. We're going to put you in hospice
Mm.
now. Um, and they said, by the way, if you get in hospice and you improve, we can get you out of hospice. But, that was the moment all hope, left.
Oh,
That,
wow.
it just, as long as there was hope of any kind, she was as vigorous as she could be. She was alert. She was entertained people and all. And then she just went downhill.
Yeah.
And it was and I'll jump around a little. You learn things that just really are stunning to you, and you can't explain.
Hmm.
She was in the. We tried to do hospice at home. It just we couldn't do this, so they put her into a facility, and we stayed there with her. The whole family was with her, and but she was just hanging on,
Mm.
and she was non-responsive and hanging on. And finally, one of the hospice nurses came to me and said, "Bob, even though it seems like she doesn't really know what's going on around her and all, she said she's worried. She's worried about you and what you're going to do, how you're going to do if she's not there. So I want you to go in by yourself and just sit down and talk to her." And said, "Susan, I'm okay. If you got to leave, leave. I'm ready for it. I'm strong. Don't worry about me. Just do what you have to do." And it wasn't 15 minutes before she died.
What?
And the lady there said, "I told you." She said, "That's
Oh, wow.
the first one." And I said, I couldn't, I said, "Well, that's beyond any logic at all."
Wow.
And
That
so,
I've heard those things before, but that's crazy.
well, it was crazy. I mean, it's just because, there was no evidence that she had any idea what was going on.
Right. Oh my God. That's crazy. Those hospice nurses are something else. I mean,
Oh, I tell you, the hospice thing, and people were so nice. Um, it just you find out the goodness in people when something like that happens. I'll mention these um, people only because they're quasi, people would know. But uh, our my group that goes to Honduras that you're part of, our wilderness team. There was one year I couldn't go, and that's because Susan was getting close to the end, so I didn't go. And she died on April 23rd, and the trip was, the end of March or whatever. And so we wake up on a Saturday morning, and clearly during her illness, I was not the best gardener in the world or whatever. But we wake up, and the entire team's there at our house, and they're doing what they call a yard crash. They had gotten all the mulch and stuff like that, and they came in and they worked all day. But one of the people that was, Susan at this point was not feeling well at all. But one of the people, or two of the people really, were Vince Dooley working in her yard, and she's a big Georgia fan, and also Barbara Dooley, his wife. And
wow.
and she comes out and sits on the stoop in front of the house, and she's watching everybody and all. And I thought, what joy that brought to her. I mean, it was just incredible. In fact, I talked to Barbara Dooley the next week, and I said, "Boy," I said, "Susan really enjoyed you guys being there. I'm so thankful." She said, "Enjoyed it." She's out there bossing us around, telling me what. And then the other, which is very sweet, is Hank Aaron,
Mhm.
who is always very nice, just a wonderful man. He he called me one day, and this was close to the end, and he said, "Bob, I'm going to do something. I'm just warning you up front. It'll be a little bit of a surprise, but I want to tell you that you have no say so. This is
Oh.
for Susan only. You have no vote." Well, so Susan gets a check from Hank Aaron for $2,000, and it says, "I know you have charities that you really believe in and like. Divide this money up, send it to them, and tell them it's a gift from Hank Aaron."
Aw.
Oh my gosh! I mean, Susan, in fact, she sat there writing these notes out to their little book reading thing for kids and all that.
Oh.
And after she died, I go and look next to her lounge where the she has those with stamps on them and all, and I just go ahead and drop them in the mail. So,
Wow. That is awesome. That's such a great story.
but you do see, I mean, how people I mean, I mentioned earlier that she said that one of the positives in a difficult situation was that most people don't really aren't really around when their life is celebrated,
Yeah.
and that she had an ongoing celebration of her life. So,
That's really true. We had that a couple times with John when he was having particularly hard times. And one, of course, it was during COVID. And remember, they used to do all the car parades for
Yeah.
birthdays and all that stuff. And he was having a pretty hard time and mentally. And one of the women from the CF Foundation put this whole video together, collected all these messages from everybody, and had a little video for him, which was so special. But then organized a whole car parade, and there were at least 100 cars. We sat at the base of my driveway. I'm looking right here with
Oh
him,
yeah.
everybody with signs and honking, and oh, it was just so magical and beautiful. It was just, oh God, just like the
Well,
way to lift your spirits.
yeah, Susan hated social media, Facebook. She wouldn't be on it for anything. But when she was sick, if, if somebody would post something about her, she said, "Now tell me what what are the comments? What are the comments? She wanted to know what the
I
comments were."
love it. Well, let's go into like, so to catch up the listeners, when John died, you started reaching out to me via Facebook and just checking in, and I was having a hard time, and then it got to be whatever around January, February after he died in November, and was it, yeah, that same year, and I was discovering how very, very joyless I was. And you had started mentioning this trip to Honduras. And I was like, I still have kids at home. My husband just died. Is he insane? Like, I'm not going on this trip. This is crazy. And then you had mentioned it a few times, and it was one of those things that was crazy because I think I've told you the story, but John had obviously heard about this trip through you many years prior, because we went to one of your fundraisers and we
Yeah.
had learned about the trip, and we were both like, oh my God, we want to do this trip. But it always fell right before our big fundraiser. So we couldn't be gone for that long during that last stage of planning. So you DM'd me one night and you said, and it was like that day that I was like, I have no joy in my life and I got to figure this out. And you messaged me and you said, you need Honduras and Honduras needs you. And I had a couple other things happen, like a sign from John that day, and then there was something else I found like in my bedside table that like kids did a report on Honduras. And I was like all in one day. So I was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to Honduras. And that literally, as you know, changed my trajectory, because that very first day for me, as you know the story, I say my heart grew 3 sizes that day. I had so much joy seeing the kids at the school and just seeing what was happening there, and seeing how much joy those people who had suffered so much and had so little in their lives, but they still found a way to feel joy. It just changed my perspective. So talk about, how did the Have Foundation start? Why did it start? I know Susan had a big part in that. So
Well,
share that with.
Susan, I mean, Susan was the first one to go to Honduras. I mean, the Honduras outreach, I think it's 35 years old. It was 30 years ago was the first time I went. And Susan had been with the church to this rural area. And I used to, and then Claire went down there, my youngest daughter, and worked during the summer taking medical groups up into the mountains. And Susan would always say, Bob, you'll never go down there because at that time, there's no electricity. There's, you know, it's just, you're out of touch with the outside world. It's not comfortable. And you don't like to camp. You like to be comfortable. And then, so she just didn't think I'd do it. And then Claire went down for the summer, and I would tell people she was in the jungle of Central America or something, but it's not the jungle. But Claire came back and she said, Dad, you just need to go down there. She said, you'll like the people, you'll see there's a need. Said, I think you'll really appreciate it and want to do something. So they finally set up a trip, and Susan went with me, even though she was thinking I'd hate it. Susan went down there and she just loved it. And so because I was going down just to kind of find out what was going on, they took me around and showed me the entire valley and all, kind of gave me a really good overview. And at the end of the trip, I knew that at that point they just had churches come down, church groups and all. And I said, look, I'm nobody's spiritual leader. I mean, I go to church, but I said, I don't think I just do. Susan and I used to be youth coordinators of our church. I said, I'm never going on another retreat. I'm never going to sing Kumbaya again in my life. So I'll do it, but I don't really want it to be, church related.
Yeah.
And nothing against it. I said we're not going down there to pray. I'll pray at home,
Right.
and then and also I really don't think I can get a church to come together with enough people. So if I just get a group of friends, what can I do? And they said, well, what we don't have right now are schools.
Mhm.
And at that time, it was really interesting. They really didn't have schools. There were a couple of little one-room schools up in villages, but they couldn't get teachers. So they'd get a teacher 1 year, and the teacher would leave. They wouldn't have one for 4 years. So it's just there was really no semblance of education. So I just, it just, you want to find something that can be a path to passion, something that you can really, believe in. And so I like the idea of recruiting people. I like the idea of going down there and building something. And by the way, you've seen the schools, and schools look pretty good now. Well, I'm
Chris-
telling you, the middle school was just a solid rock of nothing. And we
Wow.
went over there and dug out the footings and built it up from nothing. And it just got into it. And over the years, I'd invite more people. And then, I'm in a Rotary club. Rotary came in. They did, when we built the school, did a Rotary grant to kind of equip the school with the stuff we needed. I kept asking people to go. Vince Dooley was a friend of mine, and first time I went down there, I called him and asked him if he wanted to go, and he said no. But he said I can't now, but someday I'll go with you. And so I just gave up about 6 years
Mhm.
later, and then suddenly he called me and he said, Bob, you still going to Honduras? I'll go with you. Well, Vince went down each year, and he had sort of the same experience I had. One of the things Barbara, his wife, said is it's just something that Vince was doing on his own. Nobody was forcing him to do it. It was his thing, and he became beloved down there. But if you have a group of 30 people going someplace and Vince Dooley's going along, suddenly you have a group of 60 people. It's the group got bigger, and for the longest time we used to think, well, if what's the maximum number we can handle? We said, oh, it's 15, 16, 17. And then finally we get to 60 or so. I figured, well, we'll just divide it up. It'll be like mini groups in the different projects. And it's just something that's grown with me. It's a great, I mean, I adore you. I mean, you're my friend. We go to Honduras together. You're just the precious person in my life. And and I always say one of the great benefits when you do it is you're helping those people there, but you're helping yourself because you're with a group of people that are good people that are determined to do their best down there, and they become your people.
Yeah.
I mentioned it. I had mentioned it before, but the longest running academic study in the history of academics, I guess, was the Harvard study on human relations, and it went over 90 years, and they interviewed hundreds of people about human relations, and when they were in college, what they studied, how they did, and then how their life going on. They finally found out the ones who did best. It was a simple thing. It was the ones who had the most friends and the closest friends. So there's a big book like this, and you can read the book. That's fine. But then when you get to the last page, the conclusion says that you can judge someone's happiness by how many people they can call at 2 in the morning if they're in trouble. And I keep thinking in their group, I mean, you have 50 some odd people that any one of them you could call up, and they're going to do whatever they can to help you because you are their friend. They love you. They're whatever. And I think that's irreplaceable. You can't, you just can't find that. It just doesn't happen in daily routine.
Totally. And I think that there's a trip like that attracts a certain type of personality. So people who are not there, it's going to be filled with like-minded people is what is the
And
best.
also the people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and get a little dirty and all that. And I said,
I'm
you know,
saying it's
it's
not
sort of
luck.
like the people that are willing to, you walk with kings without losing the common touch. And I think
Mhm.
people get down there and that is the common touch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's something about digging dirt and mixing cement with and painting schools, you
Oh,
know,
yeah. And
something.
just having the kids, I mean, the chaos of the kids fighting for candy, all that just brings
Okay.
joy.
It's so good. Yeah, that's amazing. And just to think about what how that school has grown over the years. I mean, all the other things that the group does, that the Have Foundation has been a part of, from the water filters to all the medical outreach to the nutrition outreach to everything. But the schools, like the impact is just insane.
It was interesting, when we went the first couple of years, we were an exploratory group. We were going down there to figure out education. So we had all these ideas and we had a plan on what they needed to do. We bring our plans back. Well, first of all, they didn't have anybody to do it. And second, they didn't have any money. And
Yeah.
so, we started HAVE, which stands for Honduras Sagalta Valley Education, the foundation to raise money to build the schools. And they say that great ideas without money are delusions. I mean, we needed to get beyond being a
Yeah.
delusion, and it just sort of took off. And people do good things. I mean, everybody kind of takes on roles that they particularly like. They also meet people. I don't. Love is not at a certain level. I mean, it varies, and you get down there and you find people that you really closely relate to, and even people that you they probably need you in different ways. I mean, I know there's a couple of young people that went down there that just were struggling to find their role in life that just took to you, and you stay in touch with them and kind of help guide them. And that's a marvelous thing. I mean, and without them having been in that kind of situation, they might never find somebody like that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I love it. As you know, it's something that's really special to me, and I just look forward to it every year. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I'm grateful that you. Uh, I will say you gave me the little nudge many times that I
Well,
need to step
you're
outside.
not as grateful as I am because
So good.
people like you. I mean, think of all the people that are part of your life now that wouldn't be part of your life
I know
otherwise.
there's lots and lots and lots who are very
Yeah.
special to me. Very special to me. So yeah, that's something I'm so grateful for. But you're right, it does there obviously our presence there makes things better in the Agulta Valley, but what you bring back and what it changes in your own self is like
Oh, yeah.
a
And your
thousand.
perspective on the world is so different.
Yeah.
I think I've told this story probably too many times, but I had a friend named Benno Schmidt who was the president of Yale. And Benno said that the only student he ever admitted on presidential privilege was that they had an application that was brought to him, and they on the line that says, "Why do you want to go to Yale?" And he said the answer the kid gave was, "Yale is known as a university that trains great leaders. I'm a great follower, and I think you just need at least one great follower if you have all these great leaders." Well, down there, I think that the nice thing about it is, we have people who are leaders, but they also are followers. They
Mm.
just tend to be able to work together and sort of sort through who's doing what. And,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think any of them have ever said, okay, go up into a remote village and we want you to mix cement, put in cement floors. Now, who's taking the lead and
Yeah.
who's following, and they just got to sort it through, and it all happens.
That's true. It does all kind of work out, and it is a filled with type A personalities, but it still
That's
works
true.
out. That's
And we
amazing.
really haven't, I mean, to my knowledge, maybe hide it from me, but we never really, I think everybody seems to get along. They just seem
Yeah.
to,
That's all I've seen.
we have a couple of grumpy people, but that's
Yeah.
why they don't tend to go back.
They bounce back though. It's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Well, and then you had you we all just celebrated your big 80th birthday, and I thought it was so cool what your daughters did and your family did in your honor and Susan's honor. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you don't really plan to be 80. I mean, in my mind, I'm your age. I don't want to hang around 80-year-old people. They're old. But so anyway, they tell me they're going to have the birthday party. They tell me where it is, and
Yeah.
then I know that they've sent out a lot of invitations, and I know some of the people I submitted they to be invited, they zapped. They didn't invite the others they added. But it was just a great turnout of a lot of people. There were over 100 people there, and they told me there'd be a couple of surprises, and I was scared. I thought, well, first of all,
Yeah.
only been on one cruise in my life, and that was great through the Greek Isles. But I do not like being on a boat. I just feel like I'm like going to fall. I don't know. I guess maybe it's Titanic syndrome or something.
Yeah.
But I thought they were going to get me a cruise around the world or something like that. But then the thing they did is they set up a foundation in my name and Susan's name, and they're going to put the money in there and let it, multiply, and then, dole it out to things that I guess they feel that would be important to me because I don't have any say so in the foundation.
It's in
Well,
your
it was thoughtful, and it's meaningful. I mean, and through our friend Jared, the city council made it Bob Hope Day on my
yeah,
birthday, and that was nice.
so
And it
cool.
didn't say just this year, so I feel like
Oh,
every
it's
year I'm
everybody.
going to celebrate Bob Hope Day and ask people to send me gifts.
And even if it's not necessarily dated, you
Yeah.
can totally claim it and just be like, hey,
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. Every
it's my
every great holiday has to start someplace. It's
right.
like Guy Fawkes Day in England. I'm sure Guy Fawkes would never have thought that his day would be a big holiday.
Uh-huh.
It's celebrated because he's the guy that burned down Parliament. So,
Well, don't do anything like that, but we can still celebrate you every year for
there
sure.
you go.
Well, I think I've gone through all my thoughts on this. What is something that I didn't ask you about or cover, or something that you
I
would.
mean, I think both of us and all of us in this situation go through what's your thoughts on the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And I know from my standpoint, a couple of people that I knew had been through it said, don't do anything stupid for a couple of years,
Mhm.
because you'll be too emotionally driven to make a mistake. And so I waited for a while, and then I did stuff stupid. And I basically, you think even Honduras affects me on this. You feel sort of guilty that there's one person in a 5 bedroom, 3 story house thinking, that's obnoxious. I mean, it's just what an incredible waste of resource and money. So I finally, um, actually was going to sell the house, but then a bat got out of the attic and flew around my bedroom, and I thought, this is a sign. I got
There
to get
you go.
find
That's
a place that doesn't have bats. And so I, quickly got into selling the house, and then, it's interesting mindset. You keep thinking, okay, my life is winding down. And that's, I mean, and that was my mindset totally. It's like, okay, I'm going to have an estate sale. We have all this stuff
Mhm.
we've collected. I mean, Susan collected, just had an incredible sports
Oh yeah.
memorabilia collection. And, I thought, well, let's get it in the hands of people. We enjoyed it, getting in other people's hands to enjoy it. We had all these collectibles and things we had gathered from over the years. And I had in my mind, I just need to get all this behind me. I just want to get rid of all this stuff and move on. And, I look back and I think, well, darn, I wish I'd kept some of the things. We
Yeah.
just I was just too fast. It was almost like I was trying to escape the situation. And so I moved into a little apartment in Decatur. Now I've moved into a nice condominium. But, I'm just kind of like waiting it out. And
Mhm.
Susan said, well, you got to promise me you're going to date after I die and all that stuff. And so I went on the dating site trying to date. I mean, I'll have to say that I took more women to lunch and dinner who hated me than I found out. I thought, well, that didn't help my ego at all. And then, you want to date for a while. And dated. And I remember a really nice woman who I've dated for a couple of years said, "Now you just don't seem like you're dating." And I said, well, hold on a second. You know, I'm, I'm 70 something years old. It's been a long time. I'm not 18. And you
That's
just realize you got to kind of find your place and see what's comfortable with you. And I think it took me a while to finally realize, okay, I can have friends. I can care about my friends.
mhm.
I don't need to find somebody who I'm going to live in the same house with and pretend like I'm starting over because the it's not fair to them. I mean, my runway is going to be reasonably short, and it's just probably not the best for me because it's going to maybe slow me down, not do all the things that I just sort of like to do if I'm on my own. So that's been I don't say a difficult process. And then the other thing is, a lot, the person I was dating always said, well, you just need to move on from Susan. And I said, well, I don't talk about her. He said, yeah, but every time we go someplace, I feel like she's sitting there with us. And I said, that's the way you feel. I don't feel,
Oh yeah.
that way. And I said, so, but I tell you, the other thing is, I don't think I'll ever move on. I just
Well,
don't feel like I need to because that's 46 years of my life. It's my children, it's my grandchildren, it's, wonderful memories. Those things don't go away.
they don't go away. I think that's such an interesting thing. And I do a lot of writing about the widows and dating because it's a whole different beast when you lose someone versus divorcing someone. It because the person is still, the pictures are still up. They're still very present in your life, even though they're not physically here. And I just recently, and what you said just made me think of that. I was talking to a widow friend of mine who is in her early 70s, and she was saying something about the person she's dating now she's like, I just don't know if it's like real because I don't feel that I don't love him the same way as I loved my husband. I'm like, how could you
Yeah.
love someone the way you loved your spouse who was with you for 46 years or 20 years or whatever? For John and I, you two, you guys were very young. We grew up together. I met John when I was 18 years old. I am
Hmm.
not the same person right now as I was when I was 18. So we grew up together. We raised children together. It's like there's a gazillion layers of different types of love in a relationship like that when you're at this stage of life, you don't even have the opportunity to create those layers. So it will be a different type of relationship. It will be a different type of love, but I think that that's something that we don't think about as widows and widowers, that you can love someone probably, but it's never going to be the same
It's
kind.
not going to be the same. Also, I think there's, I went over to visit with my friend now. It wasn't my friend then, um, Alexander Bird, who's head of the philosophy department at Cambridge University in England, and
Uh-huh.
spent a week with him. And when I went over there, I thought philosophy was fairly esoteric.
Yeah.
But then after being with all his philosophers, and he has 135 philosophers or what,
Oh, wow.
and you realize that these beliefs are sort of part of of the way we look at life,
Hmm.
and that maybe not all of that is at my age, you're much younger, is necessarily the case. I
Hmm.
mean, like like the Spartans, the ancient Spartans. I mean, they didn't have husbands and wives. They just had you know communities of people, and then when a baby's born, the community took care of the baby. So,
Yeah.
that's not an approach you want to have, but at the same time, you realize, is it okay? I mean, I adore you. I
Hmm.
adore Michelle. I adore a lot of, Betsy calls it my rotation. These women in your life who you just, who are all precious to you. Well, that's at my age, that's fine. I feel like, okay, I can live with that. If I go to dinner you know, with you, I can just a celebrate, have a great time. And then we may not go to dinner for 6 months, but at the same time, there are people who are in your heart, are precious to you, and you don't have to have a piece of paper to say that. Look, and you also at my age, I'm not having more kids, so it's not.
That does take things off the table. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But it's you're never going to quite figure it all out,
Mhm.
but you're always in the process of thinking, you know, um, what makes you happy, what makes you,
Mhm.
comfortable, uh, what makes the people around you who you want to be happy.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I mean, I've sent it to my daughters and all, or my daughters, they think it's silly. I've sent it to my granddaughters, send you and some others. I just send them a little note every morning. And
Mhm.
the reason I do it is just so they know I'm thinking about them.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I think all of us need to know at some point that people are thinking about us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really good. It's like one of those things that you're just doing it's like a little hello, you're on my
Yeah.
mind. I love that. I love that. Well, I love this conversation too. I love learning more about Susan. I mean, I love it when you start talking about her because, I feel like I learn something new each time. You have 46 years of stories. So obviously it takes a lot of time to share all of those, but I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing what you did about her
Well,
and
thank you.
life and as you know, you are a blessing in my life, and I'm really grateful to you for coming on today, but just for being a big part of my life.
Well,
And
you're a blessing to me too, and you know that. Never forget that. Just
thank
because
you.
anything, oh my God, get him out of my hair. But I'm glad to be around.
No, I would never say that. But I appreciate you so much, and I just love that so many things still happen in Susan's name and Susan's legacy. It just lives on through so many people. And it just proves like what an amazing person she was while she was here and still is in spirit. So um she's a she's amazing and
No, it's
very
it
like
is. I mean, and by the way, that rubs off on you. I think it rubbed off on me. I don't think I'd do a lot of things I do now if it hadn't been for the influence of her, and it also her daughters and
yeah,
grandkids that just want to, you because it so many things that kind of boil down to the fact that you know much of your happiness comes from how you make other people feel,
yeah, totally.
and you just want to you want people around you to feel good.
That's right. I mean, most of us do. There are those that don't.
That's right. But
Most people
I
are
had an old Methodist bishop one time. I was in a meeting, Bevel Jones, and it was for Young Harris College, and we're sitting there just listening. I think it was a board meeting or something. I don't know why we were in there, but these couple of people in there were just screaming at each other and yelling and all. We're just kind of looking at each other, and as we walked out of the meeting, he looked at me and said, Bob, God made some bad people. And I kept thinking, I'm glad you said that because you want to look for the good in everybody, but then sometimes you got to back off and say, well, maybe it's not there. So,
Yep,
but the good is in you, so that's good.
that's right. And we have agency, so we can remove those people from our lives. So
That's exactly it. Yeah,
that's fine. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. And
I appreciate you. Thanks a lot. This has been fun. This is good.
really fun. I really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for listening and sharing, letting us share stories. And if you have a short story to share, let me know and we would be happy to share it. But thank you. Love you, Bob. All
Love
right.
you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.